Hello and welcome back to the Middling Along podcast. I'm your host, Emma Thomas, and our guest this time is Kirsten Miller, New York Times bestselling author of over a dozen young adult titles, including the groundbreaking feminist series Kiki Strike. Kirsten also spent 25 years as a strategist in the ad industry, an experience that inspired several memorable scenes in her first adult novel, The Change, which is published in paperback here in the UK on, I think, the 13th of April, but correct me if I'm wrong. Kirsten lives in Brooklyn, where she's currently working on her next two books. Welcome to the podcast, Kirsten.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So The Change is described on your website as Big Little Lies meets The Witches of Eastwick, a gloriously entertaining and knife-sharp feminist revenge fantasy about three women whose midlife crisis brings unexpected new powers, putting them on a collision course with the evil that lurks in their wealthy beach town. Did you write that, or did your publicist write that?
I did not. My editor wrote that. It's funny because, you see a lot of jacket copy, and most of it I tend to rewrite not because it's bad, but because I'm extremely neurotic. But I loved what she wrote. Although I would say, so I didn't think of this at the time, but, people talk about Big Little Lies and The Witches of Eastwick, which are both great, but I think actually its real spiritual, ancestor was 9 to 5. The movie with Dolly Parton and Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, which I saw when I was a very little kid, and I think it really
same.
it messed with my head.
The anti-heroes.
So, in a good way.
Well, as I say, I've just finished, not long finished reading the book. Anyway, I think from cover to cover, it took me just under a week. Though that was, I kind of did it, but binged it in big chunks. And it's definitely, as I was getting towards the last, fifth of it or so, and I was really like absolutely page turning. I was like, I didn't want it to end, but equally I was just racing to get to the kind of the denouement, and I just wanted to see how it was going to finish because I wasn't quite sure. I hadn't quite figured it all out.
Good.
So your background, as you say, is ad industry, and you've sort of poured some of that experience, good and bad, into one of the characters, Harriett, in the book. So, I mean, they always say, don't they, write what you know? So how much of you is kind of in Harriett, or is it more about the sort of the situations that she finds herself in? And we have sort of flashbacks in the book to parts of her kind of career and the sort of the things that have happened to her.
Yeah, pretty much everything that happens to her in the career world is drawn from my personal experience. So I'm not saying everything happened exactly the way that, it happens in the book, but yes, all of that was based on real life experience. So I had a lot to draw on. There was some, I'm glad I did that because I had a lot of issues with the ad industry that I needed to work through, and I got it all out of my system.
That was cathartic.
Now I can move forward in life.
Like therapy, but cheaper, and you get paid for it instead of the other way around.
Exactly. I know revenge is the best motivation for writing a book. I really honestly recommend it to everyone.
I mean, the ad industry is sort of notorious for its gendered ageism, not particularly deeply buried misogyny, and so on. And I think you talked in some of the publicity for the book about replicating one particular scene, which was a particular kind of campaign that you resigned over. Are you able to kind of to tell us which part of the the novel that aligns with?
Yeah, there's in one of the chapters where we sort of flash back to Harriett's advertising career. She is presented with an ad that the creative director wants to take to the clients, that she feels is mind-bogglingly sexist, which it is. And that was that was an ad that I had some very public fights over, and ended up resigning from an agency rather than take it forward, because I thought it was so fundamentally wrong. Yeah, and it was shocking at the time, because the guys who did it, I thought, were really decent guys. They were, they were not bad people. They still aren't bad people. I don't know where they are now, but I'm sure they're lovely, great fathers and everything. And it just, it like I said, boggled my mind and broke my heart that they would come up with something that was as bad as it was. So I think that's a perfect example of the kind of incident in the book that was drawn. I was very careful to draw from real life whenever I presented something that was an example of misogyny in the work world, misogyny in sorry, that's my cat. Um, I drew from real life because I wanted to be able to say, to people who, accused me of making it up, that these were based on real life events. I mean, either things that had happened to me or to my sister or to women that I admire and know.
Yeah. And there's a lot of not just within the sort of the scenes that take place in the ad industry per se, but there are several sort of threads within the book looking at kind of male power versus female power, and the kind of the ways and the places in which women are excluded from kind of male conversations. Or I think notably one of them is a sort of up on the roof at a party where literally kind of no women allowed until Harriett steps in, and it's almost like the music stops and everyone looks around like a meerkat and like, why is there a woman in this space? She makes men feel uncomfortable, I think. This is kind of transition that she goes through the narrative, where she's kind of becoming this wild, unreally fabulous kind of, slightly, someone that kind of the nice uptight people of Mattauk look at kind of askance, and the kind of the local weirdo. But she's sort of bursting out of this cage that society has constructed for her, and people don't like it.
Well, that's exactly, so that's the power of her characters. So Harriett is, just for people who haven't read the book, she's a woman who has worked in the ad industry, and then one day, a number of things happen in a very, short period of time. Her husband leaves her. She loses her job after being denied a promotion that she rightfully deserved. And she sort of vanishes into her house, and all her neighbors assume that she's been eaten by cats. Like, old ladies are so prone to do. And she hasn't. She's gone inside and she's been undergoing a metamorphosis of sorts. And what's happened to her is that she has spent her entire life seeing things through other people's eyes. So when she was in the ad world, it was very much about not what she thought was right, even though she's developing advertising that was meant to be for women like her. Didn't matter what her opinion was. It didn't matter her level of expertise. She was told that she had to see everything through the eyes of the men that she worked with. And that is very true. That is that is sadly true.
Still now.
Oh, absolutely. And I was talking to like a 25-year-old girl who just got into advertising, and woman, I shouldn't say girl. And she just got into advertising. She's like, it's the same thing. So hopefully it'll change. It hasn't yet. But, so Harriett has made, when she's undergoing this metamorphosis, she's decided she's not going to do that anymore. She's going to see the world through her eyes and not through other people's eyes. And it changes everything. And she develops what I think is the one superpower in the book that everybody can develop. And that is, she's decided that she just doesn't give a damn anymore. And that is a place of incredible power. When you can see the world as it truly is through your own eyes, and you stop giving a shit what other people think, that frees up so many new directions and so many, and that's what happens to her, is she becomes this incredibly powerful being just by virtue of being free of all of that.
Yeah, it's like the kind of the local busybody character comes along because they're concerned about the state of their garden, and she's like, yeah, so what? Like, I care.
Yeah.
It's like, it's my garden.
Yeah, people. When I speak to people in other parts of the world, they always ask if the homeowners associations in the United States are that bad, and yes, they are.
And is that universal? Is that a kind of a thing everywhere, or?
No, it's something that's been, yes. If you live in a like a middle class or upper middle class suburb, you are more than likely to have an HOA breathing down your back. I live in Brooklyn, so nobody's telling me what to do. But yes, it's pretty common elsewhere.
Let's move on then to the other two in the trio. So I think maybe if I was going to identify with one, I was identifying with Joe, and sort of, being able to channel that kind of white hot rage that washes over us quite often in perimenopause, because maybe that's where I find myself a lot of the time, and yeah, that would certainly have come in handy a few times to have that physical manifestation of of that building up inside. Where did the sort of the inspiration for that come from?
It came from a lot of different places. It came from my life. It came from watching other women. I think, that rage is very much a common experience among women of our age. And you see so many people talking about it as if it is it's a symptom of a bigger problem. It's something that's not, it's all hormone driven, or it's something that's just in your head. And I'm like, no, maybe actually there's a reason for women our age to be really angry.
Yeah.
Maybe there are a lot of really good reasons. And maybe we shouldn't be trying to tamp that down. Maybe we should be trying to put that into action, do something with it. Yeah,
exactly. I think
exactly.
it's Heather Corinna that talks about this in their book, What Fresh Hell Is This? That a lot of the time we have good reason to be furious, and we've kind of been keeping the nice girl lid on it all these years while we've been dutifully being good daughters, good mothers, good colleagues. And it goes hand in hand with what you were saying about, giving no shits, that suddenly all this stuff starts to leak out.
Yeah, but it's just, I think so many, even now, when I hear people talk about it, and they talk about the rage, and they talk about the energy and the heat that comes with, perimenopause and menopause, it's spoken about as if it's something that we should try to treat, or something that we should learn how to deal with, and that's a step forward from something that we should be ashamed of. I think we are kind of moving out of that. But I still hear it spoken about as if it's something that we should treat. And I'm like, maybe the best way to deal with it is to actually use it, to focus it and channel it on the things that we believe need to be changed.
Where do we need to focus our attention, whether that's in our work life, or kind of relationships and home life,
Everything.
or what we care about in society?
Or even, as in the book, saving our daughters from the kind of the evildoers that have been preying on women for centuries. I mean, this is like, there are ways that we can use it. There are reasons to be mad. I would really like to see us, doing more with that energy.
Yeah. And how about Nessa? Because that's I'm not familiar with your other work, your young adult work. Is there a sort of a slightly supernatural thread that runs through some of that you kind of felt that you wanted to weave into this one?
Oh, I am extremely witchy. Naturally, I always have been, and yeah, I love. People have referred to the book as magical realism, which, I could see that, but it's really, I love in all of my writing to look at the world as a magical place, and to keep one foot always very firmly planted in reality. So the locations are real, and the settings are real, and the inspiration is very much real and rooted in in reality. But it's a world where things can happen. Interesting things can happen that may or may not feel a little bit supernatural. So her gift is being able to hear the dead. And that's actually something I stole from. So her family is from South Carolina, and I am from North Carolina. So I gave her, which believe me, North Carolinians and South Carolinians will be the first to tell you we have nothing in common.
Really?
I wanted to give her some of my Southern heritage. And in the South, every family will have a certain lore that ascribe to. And in our family, it was always said that the women could see ghosts. So I wanted to take that and put it to use. So I gave it to Nessa, and her ability. Her life has gotten so quiet. Her husband has passed away. Her daughters are in college, and her world has just gone so silent that she realizes that she's able to hear things that she wasn't able to hear before. She can hear the dead speaking to her and calling out to her. Mm-hmm. So that's her power, and she's at the heart of the whole story. She's the one who gets it started. She's the one who leads the other two into this adventure where they discover the body of a girl who's been dumped on the side of the road, and they decide that they're not going to accept the explanation that the police have offered, and they're going to find out who did it to her and punish them. So I feel like she's the heart of the book. She's the moral compass of the book, and she's also in many ways the one who pushes everyone else forward.
And I think there's also kind of a thread that runs through about and kind of develops as the women kind of step into their power, of the fear of the male characters of those women, and kind of indeed sort of women of that age in general. And so that I feel like the power itself is a very central aspect of the book, both the kind of the protagonists developing their own power, but then the kind of the power and influence that all of these and I try not to give anything away about the plot, but there's sort of the hierarchy and the sort of the male power that exists around them in the town. And then, as you say, that they're also they're giving back the power to. So there's the point where Jo is kind of trying to empower the younger generation. Harriett herself trying to sort of pass on some of her botanical learnings to kind of pass on bits of her power to kind of other women within the neighborhood. So I kind of feel like that is the thread that is running throughout the whole book.
Well, I think that's so it's sort of a reflection of what I see happening all around me. So our generation, Gen X, the women of our generation are by far the most powerful generation of women in the history of the world. No doubt, hands down, there's no comparison. And so we're really in uncharted territory here. And I think that we've gotten to the point where we have all of this power and we don't even know that we have it. And we don't know how to use it yet. And I see this. I think that's one of the reasons that you're seeing a lot of backlash to women's rights these days.
Yeah.
Is because there are people who can see where this is going.
Yeah. They don't like it.
And they don't like it. If we come into our power and we really figure out how to use it and how to meet our needs better, and we pass that power on to our daughters and the next generation, think of how unbelievably powerful they're going to be. And that's I think the great legacy that we have to offer to the next generation is just saying, you do not have to live by all the rules that your grandmothers did. You do not have to. This is a completely different world. You're able to do things and change things and affect things that women were never able to do. Now it's your job to go out and continue the fight and take it, into the places where women are still very much discriminated against, and other parts of the world where women really really do need our help.
Definitely. And I think there's definitely that again sort of mentioned the sort of the fear factor of the ones that won't stay quietly in the little boxes that have been ascribed to them, who who are turning around and saying, not anymore. I'm just not going to play those games anymore.
There's no reason. I mean, this is, we all have been told stories about what it means to be a woman of our age. And, one of the first stories that I was told, probably when I was in my early 20s, was just this idea that you're going to reach a certain point in your life where you disappear. And that's an incredibly terrible thing to tell a young woman, that she has this limited span of time in which to make her mark on the world. And having reached the age at which I'm supposed to disappear and still being very much present, I think it's important to point out that all of these things that we were told either were never true or certainly are not true today. And we need to stop believing them. We need to stop repeating them. And we absolutely must not pass them on to our daughters and to our nieces and to our, to the next generation. It's bullshit. We don't have to play these games anymore. As a woman, and this is totally different. My mother's generation was they were pushing boundaries, but they were still playing very much in the same game that their mothers had been. But, as a woman today, you don't have to get married if you don't want to. You don't have to have children if you don't want to. You can get the education that you need. Your work experience is probably going to be more difficult, for quite some time to come, but at least you can have one. When my mother got out of college, you could be a nurse or a teacher, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
And, so this is everything that we have heard, everything that was passed down to us from our grandmothers and our mothers. It doesn't apply to our generation. So stop saying it. Stop living it. Stop trying to impose it on other people. And, I think that would would be one big step towards making the world a much better place.
Yeah, we want more kick-ass role models into their 50s, yes. 60s, 70s, not the kind of the cozy TV detectives of, Murder, She Wrote, although, great program, but, if that's the only kind of older lady role model that...
I have a friend who's, I think his father used to say that Jessica Fletcher, the main character, was the most successful serial killer of all time because she would go in to some new town, she would murder somebody, and then she would pretend to investigate it, and nobody would ever suspect her.
A nice little old lady.
And she'd pin the crime on somebody else. She was a master genius. Somebody ought to write that book.
Let's just talk about delve into the kind of the general conversations around menopause and maybe some of the differences, because you're based in the US, I'm based in the UK. I think we're probably quite a lot further along in terms of the kind of the conversations and things that are happening in the workplace. There are, certainly even since the sort of the hardback version of your book came out, a lot more people in the US talking about this more vocally, people like Naomi Watts, for example. Yes. But I sense that sort of gendered ageism pressure on women is much greater in the US, perhaps, than it is here in the UK.
Well, I can't compare because I haven't lived in the UK, although I will tell you that I did for a long period of time work quite a lot out of the London office of an ad agency, and it was an infinitely better experience than working out of New York as a woman. I felt that could be an isolated incident, and the Dutch are always lovely to work with. I love the Dutch. I think, yes, you guys are you're much farther ahead than we are. It's a discussion that is just now coming to, you're seeing it in the papers, you're seeing it, in the word come up in places you never would have seen it come up before. There was almost no discussion of it at all until maybe about 2 years ago. And you're starting to hear more and more, and there are people who are really pushing it, like Naomi Watts, who's doing a great job. And there's a woman named Stacey London, who's a sort of fashion person who actually lives somewhere in my neighborhood, and I keep hoping to see her. But
to engineer a way to accidentally bump into her.
I will stalk you, Stacey London. You know, it's. I'm hoping it's something that will be, will be more of a topic of conversation in the years to come. If I'm leading that charge, I am very happy to do it.
Well, I was going to ask you if you feel like your book, The Change, has opened up some of those conversations. Have you had some interesting kind of conversations?
Yes, I think it's opened up a lot of things. That it's not just menopause. It's, I think, a lot of conversations that women have not been having. I hear a lot of, obviously I get a lot of feedback about how wonderful it is to see women sort of coming into their power at this age, as they should. This should be the most powerful time in a woman's life. I believe that. I'm not selling some, snake oil.
Skin in the game.
That's something I truly believe in. But other things, I've heard a lot of stuff from, talked a lot about employment issues with women, particularly women finding themselves pushed out of jobs at a certain age. And that age is not always 50, by the way. That age can be much, much younger. So, any younger listeners should have that on their radar as well. And also just menstruation issues. We do not talk about that stuff. You guys are much better, and the Aussies are even better than you are. Because I used to work on period products when I was in advertising. And I was always in awe of what you could get away with in Australia. I'm like,
moved away from the blue-colored water. Very early on.
Exactly. They were pioneers. Just the things that one's body goes through in kind of, between your, late 30s and your early 50s. Nobody was talking about that. Nobody that and even people that I know, when the conversation was brought up, these were things that you talked about in a hushed voice. And that's another thing that I think we really need to change. We need to start talking about women's bodies. We need to start doing it openly and without any shame or hesitation. And I see that's one of the things that when I look at I have a 14-year-old daughter, and when I look at her generation and how fearless she is, and I'm not saying that's everywhere, there's certainly places where girls aren't able to talk so freely, but she and her friends, they don't find it. There's no stigma around it the way that there was when I was growing up. When I was 14, the idea that a boy would know that you had your period, or see, like a tampon or a pad in your purse, I would have been mortified. They could not care less.
Right.
Some of these, and I love that for them. And we need to bring that to all stages of a woman's life, because it's dangerous not to. I think a lot of women are going through a lot of things physically and emotionally that they aren't prepared for, because nobody ever tells them to be prepared for it. And it can be scary as hell if you have a really, really heavy, perimenopause period and you don't know what's causing it.
Yeah. Or the brain fog that, hear that all the time, that people are terrified that have early onset dementia, or, or the kind of the anxiety and the depression, suddenly out of nowhere, it's like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah. And it's just, once you know that this is temporary and, it's a wave that you have to ride, it gets a lot easier. There's going to be a beginning and an end to it, instead of, oh my God, I'm now completely insane and, I'm going to be homicidal for the rest of my life. But we need to have those conversations, and you guys are much better at them right now than we are.
So talking about, you mentioned your daughter, how do you write your young adult fiction for kind of with her in mind, her and her peer group?
I don't. So I'm moved on from young adult fiction. It's yes, a lot of it. I mean, I think especially my first series, and it was written before she was born, but I wrote a series called Kiki Strike, which was which I still hear from people who read it, 15 years ago, that it was kind of their first feminist handbook. And that was it's wonderful to hear, because that's exactly what I intended it to be. And I did that with my own daughter, future daughters in mind. What was the book that you could have given a girl at 12 that would encourage her to keep all of that moxie and,
because we
and
hear about that just
confidence.
kind of dissipating around 10, 11, 12, that suddenly
Exactly.
go to secondary school.
So I wanted to write a series of books that were like a shot in the arm, an inoculation that would help girls avoid whatever it is that makes them lose that. And
I'm going to seek them out, because I have a feisty, almost 10-year-old who will be just perfect for.
They are insane, but I love them. I'm very proud of them.
And tell us a little bit about what you're working on next, or now.
I'm juggling 2 projects right now, and the first project was I was writing sort of a follow-up to The Change. It's not a sequel, but it's sort of set in the same universe. So it's actually set in the same town, but the characters are different. It focuses on a family that has lived in a particular spot for 150 years. And you will see characters from The Change sort of flit through, but it's not about Harriett and Joe and Nessa. It's about these 2 other women and their family. And it's really about the things that we pass down from generation to generation, and the sort of, the sort of the magical things that get passed down, the not so magical things that get passed down, and, how we are basically, we're an amalgam of our ancestors, and how important that is to sort of look back and acknowledge where we got the things that make us special. It's a really lovely book. It's also, there's a lot of murder in it as well. So it's a really touching story about families who murder people.
I mean, I've been tempted to murder some of mine a few times, so.
They don't murder each other, they murder other people.
Are you kind of envisaging a whole series now that you've got the whole neighborhood up here?
Yeah, I love it. So one of the, when you write a book, I mean, the hardest part is obviously world building. How does this world function? What are their rules? How do women come to have these special powers? Blah, blah, blah. And so once you have that set up and you have a set of characters and you have a place, it's really, really wonderful to sort of play with it. It's like creating it's like Minecraft.
Like demigod.
And then you go in and you play with, you beat people up and stuff. It's fun. So I've been working on that, and another project just sort of fell into my lap, and it was something I got really, really excited about that I couldn't stop working on. So I traded places, and I'm going to finish that one first and the other one second. And but I'm doing them both this year, and it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. I'm really into it.
Good.
Writing is always fun.
I take my hat off to anyone who writes a book, because I do not have the discipline to sit down and write every day. I have tried and failed.
People assume that it's talent, but it's, talent plays a fairly small role. You got to have the butt power to sit on your butt for hours and hours on end and get it done.
Well, I shall very much look forward to reading the follow-up. I think, this was probably, aside from The Midnight Library, this is the fiction work that I have just read through at intense speed in the last couple of years. So,
oh, that's good. I just read Midnight Library as well. I liked it very much.
I think I read it almost in one sitting. I was just like,
it's a much shorter book.
Yes, this is true. So.
You could probably put 3 of those books in my book. So I call that, some people call it annoying. I call it more bang for your buck.
Exactly. I started reading this. I was taking my kids to swim class, and it was so good. My daughter was sitting next to me trying to talk to me. I'm like, just like, pushing her out of the way. But like, I'm busy. I'm reading. What is it? Is it important?
when you neglect your children, that's when you know you have a good book.
Totally invested. Kirsten, thank you so much for your time. Very much looking forward to reading the follow-up. The Change is out in paperback very soon. If you haven't already read it, please do go and get it. I'm not going to say it's going to change your life, but the 3 absolutely fantastic role models for those of us going into that period of our lives, and
the best period
of power. Find your superpower if you're listening, and go after it with everything you have. Kirsten, thanks again.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Middling Along podcast. Do remember to subscribe to be notified when our next episode is live. And why not visit the blog at www.middlingalong.com to sign up to my newsletter as well. I do hope you enjoyed listening today. If you did, I'd be really grateful if you would consider leaving a short review, as that helps people find the podcast and helps get it noticed. Hope you can join us next time. Goodbye for now.